Yo guys, welcome to The Last Lap.
Don't forget to drop a lovely, juicy 5-star rating if you're watching on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Hope you enjoy, and let's get into it.
I think initially there wasn't necessarily a lot of like cohesion, but I think like with stuff like COVID and people kind of having to communicate with each other, or people were posting way more work at that point, and I think that changed the parameters. I think beforehand, not intentionally, but there was just kind of like divides, oh, well, I'm not going to talk to the Merc designers because, I don't like Mercedes, or I'm not going to talk to the Ferrari guys because, I don't like Ferrari. It's not, there's no, I think a lot of sort of the animosity you see between like fans and stuff doesn't actually correlate between like people working 100%. In it. And it's like really funny to the people working in it when you see like fans going for each other's throats on Twitter,
like tribalism, and just like obviously it's not going.
What did you say about it? You're like,
well, all the pit crew are on the same flights going home.
Yeah. Of course they're all
everyone's
mates.
mixed.
I was on the same flight as all the McLaren. I think it was McLaren and Haas, like going to and from Miami. I was in business.
All right.
They're all walking past. I'm wearing full Red Bull gear, like piecing them out. There's no.
And they're giving you one of them back.
Pretty much. I mean, they weren't happy. But then they got their own back when we got to the terminal because they've all got their like priority access to their bags. So I was stood there for an hour and a half. Yeah, win some, lose some. But there's no animosity between people. But I think as time's gone on, I think the networking and sort of the hands of friendship, shall we say, has kind of improved and people are talking. But then from a design perspective, it benefits, if I look at it, like if you just look at it completely objectively, it benefits me to actually sort of reach out to all these different like teams and the designers and know who people are, because the end of the day, you're always looking like, what's everyone else doing? What's like Alfa Romeo doing? Because like, some of their graphics absolutely slap. Right? How can we bring elements of that into what we're doing or something similar? You look at Williams and, they've just started doing motion design in their graphics. How do we kind of bring that element into it? And it's just kind of, at the end of the day, like it's so, as I said, incestuous that people are always kind of taken from everyone. That's why I think the social media side of the, look at it back in 2017-18. It was like a wasteland.
Jesus.
And now we've got Ferrari doing memes. It's a new.
It's crazy. It's a new world. See, I was going to ask, do you get that like total creative freedom? Because obviously when we were talking about liveries before on the show, there's like such restriction in what you can do because certain brands and companies want this and that.
Yeah.
Do you have to deal with that?
You're designing a billboard on wheels.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a perfect analogy, really. I know people have left F1 for that reason because it is a lot, especially if, you pour so much of your heart and soul into a design, get it to a point to then have it kind of walked all the way back, and we're going to do a white car and it's going to have this on it and this on it, and then it's going to be a red car now. And you're like, come on, like this is like such a good concept, and you'll have eyeballs, and I think it's kind of balancing that frustration with sort of the reality of the sport. Like people are paying a lot of moolah to be on, the car. Doesn't matter where it is on the car.
Certain way,
and they have input, So is creative freedom, I think, varies, and I think it would also vary between team to team to team. I think if you were a newer team, so let's say like Ford, come into the sport as a new entry, I think it's more of a blank canvas there, but you're still going to be bound by what are Ford's brand guidelines, because obviously you're not going to have a pink logo. They're not going to let you do that. So it's just kind of, there's a balance, and it's just finely balanced depending on who it is.
And then obviously when you went, you've worked for Formula One, you've also worked for a team.
Yep.
When did you join Red Bull? Oracle Red Bull Racing, sorry.
Oracle Red Bull Racing, put some respect.
I noticed you said that at the start. It was that drummed into you. You have to lead with the title sponsor.
Have to know branding.
It depends. It depends, because obviously when I joined,
Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team.
Oh, hell no way. That's too much. That's Merc. It's always Merc. When I joined, it was Red Bull Racing because Aston had left the year prior, and then obviously.
So what was your first year?
First year was 2021.
Yeah.
So I think it was just after Baku, because when I did my interview, I walked around the factory. I got like a little factory tour, and the car had just come back and was in a few bits. There's a few bits. It was like but they're just like, look at the carbon, like here, it's not great. And I'm like, you're touching an F1 Like, my brain had just like gone at that point.
yeah.
Like, that was Max's car. Can you show me the wheel that he was kicking? Oh my God, like bizarre. It was the most surreal point. It was like an out of body experience. But I joined 2021 and
You joined at the maddest time.
Mate, what a crazy period of time to have joined.
How was that? Like, because emotions must have been, because obviously the time of the Baku incident,
Yeah.
Wasn't he leading? Or was it?
Yeah, Max was leading.
when he had
Yeah, because Lewis had done. Yeah,
Then Lewis did the brake magic, and so it was one of them that
It kind of balanced out in the end, but Max still kind of lost out on points, technically speaking, because he
Yeah, that was true.
'Cause,
Because
like,
wasn't that Perez's first win?
That
with
was.
the team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then Bottas got a puncture as well.
Like, what was the emotion like at the time in the team, and how did you come in? Because obviously that was such an intense year, and you've come in halfway through, and you're meeting all these new people, and you're like, are you straight at like 100%?
No,
like,
I mean,
fully.
I mean, I'm historically a Lewis Hamilton fan. I wouldn't really say I have like a team allegiance necessarily, but my soft spot has always been Red Bull. Like, so when I went to that agency interview, that was the sort of design task I did was all about Red Bull, just because I didn't know any F1 drivers. I figured Lewis Hamilton was too obvious to do like a design task round, so I just typed in F1 drivers, and there's Danny Ricciardo grinning his head off, and I'm like, he looks happy. Like, that's great. And then I'm like, drives for Red Bull have a Formula One team. I was like, I had no idea, genuinely, and I'm like, that's kind of mad.
Yeah,
I didn't really understand like the deepness of Red Bull and sort of its fingerprints across sport. So like I've always had a soft spot for like what they do and kind of how they're pushing boundaries sort of off the track and everything else. I having that soft spot and kind of going in, I was like, all right, cool. I'm align myself with obviously my employer, but the atmosphere and sort of there are people that have worked in that team for a very long time. Some people are like
Since it was Jaguar.
Yeah, some people before that, and you kind of get the energy. So like my girlfriend, now fiance, no, don't get mad. At the time, she was like, "You're going to join Red Bull, and you're going to just like get consumed by it, and everything else. You're just going to renounce Lewis Hamilton." I was like, "Nah." I ain't doing that. It's like I can work at Red Bull and still support Lewis Hamilton. Like it's calm. I think I was there for like 3 days, and I was just like, "Oh man, like Red Bull, man, Red Bull, Red Bull." Still supporting Lewis, but wanting Red Bull to win over him, which was different to how it was before, where I'd kind of like want Lewis to win, but Red Bull to somehow kind of like Lewis win drivers, Red Bull to win constructors, that kind of thing. But so many people have just wanted them to win and to kind of get over like so many, there'd been so many trip ups in the years prior, and so to kind of be in a fight. Or that was like the excitement was quite palpable. Yeah. And I wasn't there long, and suddenly you're kind of like, you're watching races with a very different, you cut to, I don't know, a different team, and you're like, get it back, show me Red Bull, I need to see, like, where's Max, what's he doing, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time, we got to, let me think, it was like was it Jeddah? I can't remember. When
they were
the whole
sort of brake testing each other. Yeah.
I was watching that, and like I thought I was going to die. Like the pressure had just ramped up. Like the whole team, like we're just living and dying off of.
Were you watching that at home, or were you watching it at the factory?
I would probably got arrested if I'd like watched, because I'd have just been like screaming, like you're getting sections. There's something clearly wrong with you. You got something wrong. No, I mean, we got to sort of like Abu Dhabi. I watched that in a bar in London, and I was like undercover because it was like turned out it was like deep Mercedes territory. It's just everyone, like all these people crawled out the woodwork. It's like Lewis Hamilton, because you remember the hype that everything had got. I had like a Red Bull thing like under my t-shirt, so ready to just pull off. If he wins, I'm just gonna like full on, like skid, like I've just scored the World Cup final in front of everyone.
Knee slide
settings. And it just obviously popped off. I mean, like it was just such a like relief, because you think I've been living with that for 6 months, give or take, of just this pressure, win, and that comes from the top down. Like it doesn't matter what your job is, anyone below the team principal, you could be someone who works in the kitchen, or maybe you're someone that works in facilities. It doesn't matter. It's like I'm just driven to just absolutely smash what I do because I want to be better than the person at other teams. Even though we've got the same job. So by the time that all kind of climaxed and kind of reached this end, I mean, like, we were just, it was unreal. Like, to the point where this year was like quite anticlimactic, because for those of us who were there the year before,
that'll never get top.
No, I mean, like, we went into the office the next day and it was just like party.
Yeah,
full on party. Like, I got in there
what, is
early.
this at Abu Dhabi?
Yeah. The next morning.
I was going to say, Christmas party must have been incredible.
Didn't have one that year because of COVID. Yeah.
Okay, what was the office like the day after then in that case?
Vibes. Just pure vibes. I mean, like, Queen was playing a lot. Like, that was on loop. That was on loop. Bro. Yeah, I mean, we ended up doing the whole thing. I don't know if, people might have seen, like, the whole sort of reaction to Max coming back to the factory and the flares and all that stuff. And just to be a part of that, I mean, what a privilege, what an honour. I mean, there are people who have worked in F1 for 30 years who have never experienced that. So for me to kind of walk in and be like, hey, yeah, cool, I'm Jake. And then, that happened was mad. Absolutely mad.
How much do you credit Christian for, it feels like he's instilled that culture within the team. It's kind of, even though they've quite consistently, been able to perform near the top. It's this kind of us versus them, like, underdog. We're the energy drink. He always talks about we're the energy drink that's coming in amongst the big manufacturers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like I think Christian deserves a lot of credit for instilling that, because that seems to have been what has given Red Bull that slight advantage. That's also what got Adrian Newey in, I think, as well.
I think so. But then that's also the mentality of Red Bull as a brand anyway. Like, we shouldn't be here is always the kind of...
Yeah.
It's like an unwritten mantra. Like, we shouldn't be here, but we are. And we're like, even a few years ago, like, we make energy drinks, but we're at the top end of the grid. And you've got, renowned designers and car manufacturers behind us, sort of like, what are they doing? How can we do that?
Yeah.
So there is absolutely like an element of that, but I think Christian obviously has a perception in the media and from fans, but I think on a sort of, I'm not going to say like on a personal level, like I've gone to his house and had cups of tea endlessly or something, but like he's not what I think a lot of people kind of perceive him to be. And not to say that he isn't without blemish or, like whatever, but he's just not necessarily that. He's a nice bloke.